I'm guessing I don't have to explain to you the value of books, why reading is a good habit to have, and that's something you should be doing. But once you get past that, another question that pops up is what kind of books should I read? And that's a whole different question. So I'm going to share my thoughts on that, and I'm going to give you a quick answer very rapidly. I went to an online entrepreneur event last weekend, and one of the speakers there said something that I definitely agree with, and that was read variety. That's something I've been thinking for quite a while as well, so I'm going to share my habits about that and a bit more of an explanation around that. So who am I? I'm Sigurd. I make videos about self and world exploration, especially for people who don't really know what they want to do in life, but they're interested in many different topics and learning. So if that sounds like you, then you should probably watch this video and also the other ones as well. So on reading variety. Well, of course, I do think there's value in reading and focusing on one specific topic that you're learning about right now, whether that's for business, maybe it's learning how to edit videos better because that's what you're doing right now, things like that. Of course, there's value to that, but I also think there's a lot of value to reading about other things as well. And why do I think that? Well, that's because life is multifaceted. So whether you're a person who's very focused on one specific topic and really focuses on that, or you're a person more like me who's slightly above average, interested in many different things, no matter what, life is multifaceted too, and if you only read about one thing, then you're kind of missing out on other parts of life as well. And even if it's something that you don't really see as useful for your life situation right now and applicable, I really do think that there's value that you can take away from everything that you read, almost. So read high quality books, but in a variety of fields. An example is what I've been doing. I've been usually buying 3 books at a time when I've been buying books. And one of them has been a biography about a person that I think I can learn from. The second one is one about business, so something applicable. There you go, about like the utilitarian books, like something that you can use and apply. So related to my business, which is in online marketing and stuff around that. And then the third one is that I've been buying one book about history / culture / science, things like that. And of course you can add on to fiction there as well, because when the speaker at the entrepreneur event talked about reading variety, he also said in the next sentence that he really enjoys reading Tolstoy. So I do think there's absolutely nothing wrong with, and it's just beneficial to read fiction as well as non-fiction as well. So an example, what have I been reading lately? Well, 2 books there to illustrate the contrast and the variety. You've got One Upon Wall Street by Peter Lynch, and you've got The Motorcycle Diaries by Che Guevara. So one is like a book on investing in the market by a Wall Street top guy, top investing multimillionaire, and the other one is a travel diary by a communist revolutionary. So there's such a big contrast there, and that really, I think that highlights the variety that I talk about and that speaker talked about as well. So obviously you can focus on a certain topic for a specific time, but throughout the year, and especially throughout your life, you should definitely focus on reading variety and not just sticking to one subject all the time. And another thing about books is that, of course, you don't have to agree with and apply everything that you read. That's one of the things that make us human. So you can read stuff and you can see if that's something you agree with, maybe it's something you disagree with, or maybe it's something that helps change your mind. So being open to different ideals and reading from people who you don't necessarily admire 100%, and you can still see their flaws and look up to them, reading their biographies as well can be really useful, not just reading from people that you think you agree with basically all the time. So reading books that are conflicting can also be very interesting. So if you're reading philosophy, which I haven't been doing, but say you did, and you read from 2 people with opposing worldviews, then there's something you can take away from each book, I guarantee that, but there's also going to be a conversation going on inside your own head about what I agree with and what I disagree with and what can change my mind. And that's, I think, part of the magic with books. And yes, we do think of books as higher quality in general than internet content, but that doesn't mean that there are bad books and good stuff on the internet, so we've also learned to recognize that. Because I'm not only reading books, I'm also reading stuff online elsewhere. For instance, a couple of weeks ago I was reading a paper online about future availability of non-renewable metal resources, which was pretty interesting, and I learned there that the main problem with metals isn't going to be physically running out of them, like other factors like human ones and conflict areas and things like that, so that the biggest factors are within what's called the ESG group, so environmental, social and governance reasons. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, and that was just a 15-minute read-ish, but I took some insight from that as well, even though it wasn't a book. Another thing about books is that you can read them in different languages, of course. So if you're at that level in a language, in a foreign language, that you think you can almost read a book, then you probably can. Of course you need to be at a certain level, but you don't need to master it, you don't need to be fluent. I've tried to read a bit in German, and even though I understand only some parts of it and there are many difficult words that I don't understand, it's still a learning experience and I still understand most of the message of the book as well. So if you're into language learning, definitely check that out as well, the opportunity of reading books in a different language. One more quick thing that I wanted to mention was how many books you read at the same time. For me, I usually only read one, sometimes two, and I have no answer about what's the best one, but I feel like you focus more on the content if you're reading a rather low amount, like one or two, instead of if you're going up in like 4 or 5, it can be really hard to pay attention to where you're at in the different books and remember what came from which one. But also there are like some different styles apply to different times of day, like when you wake up or when you're about to go to bed. You might feel that some types of books feel better for you to read, maybe fiction is better before bed for you, maybe a biography is. I'm not sure, but you can test that out and check. But when it comes to the amount of books, I wouldn't go too high on that because, well, you can lose focus. What I do think though is that that is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you read quality books with variety, which is what I've been trying to talk about this whole video. And at the end, I'm going to conclude with something that I can improve on myself, and maybe you can improve on too, which is finding more time for reading. I usually find a few minutes right before bed that I read in bed, which is great, but there are also so many more pockets of times throughout the day that I could have been using for reading. So I'm trying to do that in the future as we go along, that I find a bit more time in the daily life for reading, which I definitely should be able to do. I think it's a very beneficial thing to do, and I also think that you should be doing it as well. So I hope you found some useful information in this video and that you're a bit inspired to learn and read more variety in your books, a different amount of topics. Just let me know what kind of topics of books you're reading at the moment and what you plan to read in the future, and I'm going to see you in the next video that I make.